as with all of us, Jack's pull to witchcraft came from his relationship with the land. And this is where we find all authentic witchcraft. It's practiced and deepened with contact with the spirit of place, strengthened by an orientation to the moon and stars above our sacred landscapes. And Jack began his adolescence burning bombs in his back garden, and there are only so many large explosions you can have before you need to find somewhere a little more remote for your games, perhaps even more so with our current war of terror. Jack was driven out into the crossroads of the Mojave Desert, later a place ghosted by Jim Morrison, Charles Manson, Bobby Beausoleil, and the Solar Cult. It was a mix of industry and power lines as much as it was a pristine desert environment. And it was a very fitting and post-apocalyptic landscape where Jack found himself celebrating the Sabbaths. The clear desert light in itself is very much enough to produce an altered state. But the Mojave is also the home of peyote, San Pedro cactus, and datura, and it is highly likely that Jack encountered these allies. I would argue that witchcraft, very much like rock music, has always been about drugs. I won't ask for a show of hands, but I'm sure there are a fair number of people in this room who've had an important spiritual experience with the use of mushrooms or LSD or hashish. Yet much of modern pagan witchcraft has fallen over itself to deny this connection, falling into line with the Green Inquisition and seeking a social respectability. In our view, a witchcraft which does not actively oppose this Green Inquisition, or defend the hedgerows, or fly to the Sabbaths, is no witchcraft at all. Jack at the same time conjured a mythic past to counterweight his science fiction dreams, and the counterweight he chose was explicitly the witchcraft of old Europe. Jack's work can in this sense be seen as a fusion of the new and old worlds, and a very appropriate witchcraft for us to examine in our own times. There was something distinctly disreputable about Jack's choice of rocketeering, and the Caltech team which Jack was working with were dubbed the Suicide Squad. They had some pretty dangerous explosive catastrophes, and they all worked in a fairly slapdash fashion around explosives. The science fiction ideas that Jack was reading, he was very much turning into science fact. The black powder rockets that he developed, and the stage rocket concept in particular, he took from a science fiction story by Jack Williamson. So for Jack, when he read Crowley, and Crowley's slogan for the equinox, the aim of religion, the method of science, in Jack's world this rang very true. Jack also, on his reading of the Book of the Law, saw many scientific discoveries which were occurring being predicted in the text. Jack saw no antipathy between witchcraft and science, and was renowned for lustily invoking Pan with the launch of every single rocket. And because it was fun. With the smell of burning filling Jack's nostrils, sweat prickling through his skin, desire stirring in his loins, he would recite, "Thrill with the lissome lust of the light, O man, my man, come careering out of the night of Pan, your Pan, your Pan, your Pan, come over the sea from Sicily and Arcady, roaming as Bacchus with fauns and pards, and nymphs and satyrs for thy guards. On a milk-white ass come over the sea, to me, to me. Come with Apollo in bridal dress, shepherdess and pythoness. Come with Artemis, silken shod, and wash thy white thigh, beautiful God. In the moon of the woods on the marbled mount, the dimpled dawn of the amber fount, dip the purple of passionate prayer in the crimson shrine, the scarlet snare, the soul that startles through eyes of blue to watch thy wantonness weeping through the tangled grove, the gnarled bole, and body and brain, the living tree that is spirit and soul, and body and brain come over the sea. Your pan, devil or God, to me, my man, come with trumpets sounding shrill over the hill, come with drums low muttering from the spring, come with flute and come with pipe. Am I not ripe? I who wait and ride and wrestle with air that hath no boughs to nestle, my body weary of empty clasp, strong as a lion and sharp as an asp. Oh come, I am numb with the lonely lust of devildom. Thrust thy sword through the galling fetter, all devourer, all begetter. Give me the sign of the open eye, and the token erect of thorny thigh, and the word of madness and mystery. Oh Pan, your pan, your pan, your pan, your pan, pan. I am a man. Do as thou wilt, as a great God can. Your pan, your pan, your pan. I am awake in the grip of the snake. The eagle slashes with beak and claw. The gods withdraw. The great beasts come. Your pan. I am born to death on the horn of the unicorn. I am Pan. Your pan. Your pan, pan. I am thy mate. I am thy man. Goat of thy flock. I am gold. I am God. Flesh to thy bone, flour to thy rod. With hooves of steel I race on the rocks, through solstice stubborn to equinox. And I rave, and I rape, and I rip, and I rend, everlastingly world without end. Mannequin, Maynard, maiden, man, in the might of Pan, your pan. Your pan, your pan. This would have upset the straight scientists quite a lot. Jack's dedication to Pan seems to have worked. The solid rocket fuel which he pioneered enabled man to get into space and reach the moon. And Jack, as I'm sure most of you will know, is commemorated with a crater named after him, fittingly on the dark side of the moon. You don't have to have spent a long time in Jungian or Freudian analysis to understand why a young man might be firing rockets at the moon. But it's certainly this explosion of sexual energy which is vital for an effective witchcraft. And Jack certainly had a hard-on for magic. Jack had come across Crowley at the age of 26 in 1940 through a copy of Comson Pax, which is one of my favourite Crowley books, and contains within it a fairy tale piece called Wake World, which I think would have had a massive effect on Jack. In a matter of months, Jack was attending meetings of the Agape Lodge in Hollywood, and soon he was consuming wine and cakes and seeing a naked priestess on the altar, and all of these elements we find reflected in much later pagan witchcrafts. For example, much of Gardnerian's Wicca and the Third Degree is drawn from the Gnostic Mass. Jack and his young wife at the time were very much mesmerised by it, and I think it was the overall poetry of the Mass which gave Jack this connection to the goddess. Jack was further initiated into Crowley's mystical order, the AA, on February the 15th, 1941, unsurprisingly taking the name or formula Frater Topan. Jack's identification with Pan was very much more than a name and a number. It was really a continuation of the deal which he cut with Satan at the age of 13. For Jack, Pan was the god of the healthy, natural, sexual appetites, but those stripped of any moral fetters, an idea of the devil not as putting us in bondage, but the devil as liberator. Austin Osman Spare also looked at this process and he called it atavistic resurgence. And again, our experience is that if you're a man seeking after witchcraft, this stripping away of the veneers of civilization and this contacting the raw animal nature within us is an essential aspect. The Pan force is again arguably what we find in the Revelations under the disguise of the beast with 7 heads, who is bridled and ridden by Babalon as the mother of harlots. In England we see the same preeminence of Pan in witchcraft through Kipling, Kenneth Graham and Arthur Mackham. And Jack seems to have been dead set on identifying with this horned god of the witches and becoming Pan himself. Jack soon became head of the OTO lodge that he joined and moved the whole operation to a large mansion on 1003 Orange Grove Avenue, which was a millionaire's district of Pasadena where he'd grown up. And soon there were solstice parties and fire leaping and naked people seen in the garden causing the neighbours to call the police. Jack had to show his government credentials to convince them that he was some kind of upstanding citizen. Crowley, meanwhile, was in constant letter correspondence and despaired, writing that he was concerned the lodge was becoming that slimy abomination, the love cult. Certainly 1003 Orange Grove seems to have been a fairly continual Sabbath and was a brave social and sexual experiment, but arguably one which was bound to end in failure given the fact that there was no loss of identity that we find as in the Sabbath. Bohemians were increasingly drawn to Jack's mansion, and fatefully among them the ex-naval officer and redhead and garrulous liar, the later founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. Hubbard arrived on the scene and told a variety of ridiculous stories which seemed to impress people, and soon found himself in bed with Jack's girlfriend at the time. Jack became extremely conflicted because of this, despite professing to be fine with it. There was obviously a massive tension between Jack and Hubbard in the household. Jack losing his lover is what forced him into trying to find a replacement, and to do this he decided to summon an elemental using Enochian. And this is really the roots of the Babalon working. Jack and Hubbard both ended up working together, spending 11 days on the Enochian air tablet, and created a windstorm and a smashed lamp and a mysterious shadow. One of the interesting little bits of trivia is that the smashed lamp might reference Hubaro, I believe it is, in Enochian, which is rather close to Hubbard.